Today, we will discover Quasimodo day trading and scalping strategy. I'll cover basics of Quasimodo price action trading pattern. How can we improve our entries and make better decisions? How can we combine high and low time frames? Finally, I'll talk about 500% 10R insane trade that I took with Bitcoin. Again, I'll try to guide you with step-by-step instructions. If you're ready, let's start. Okay, for the newcomers, this is our fourth conceptual price action video. And again, you need to watch the videos in order. Because if you miss a video, you'll not understand the terms and keep emailing me like, what is MSB? I also publish study documents on Google Drive for free if you're interested in. Now, let's see the Quasimodo. Okay, Quasimodo is one of the most commonly used price action patterns in the world. There are some traders out there only specializing in trading with the Quasimodo pattern. I also personally use it a lot as long as I encounter it. So, what is it? You know the market structure breaks. We need a market structure break for a Quasimodo to happen. Once an MSB happens, the previous higher high before the deepest higher high is our Quasimodo level, which act as another supply zone for us. Some traders only consider candlestick wick. Some other traders take into consideration the last whole candlestick that makes this higher high. The color of the candlestick does not matter. We only focus on the last candlestick that makes a high point. Okay, let's see an example. In this case, as you can see, market structure break happens. It's not the most amazingly powerful market structure break, but at least it has powerful dropping candlesticks. Now can you tell me which is the last higher high before the deepest higher high? As you can see, this one. And this green candlestick creates this higher high. As I said before, the color of the candlestick does not matter. First of all, draw a line from the high point. That is your Quasimodo level. Some traders only use this line. However, if you ask me, this is too precise and hard to encounter perfect trades. The other thing that you can do is draw a zone from the candlestick that makes the high. At least this gives you a zone. The problem is I do not enjoy drawing too many things in my charts. I personally use it both ways, drawing a line or a zone. As you can see in the example, the price comes to the Quasimodo level and gives us a good entry point. You can find QML with high time frames and low time frames. So, bullish QML has no difference at all. Again, the first thing that you should wait for is the market structure break. Then the second thing that you should do is identify the lower low that happens before the deepest lower low. And there you have it. This is your QML level and the QML zone. It's a simple price action pattern, guys. Very easy to spot. Today I want to talk about the layer system. Have you ever used Photoshop? Then you know the layers. There is a way to identify strong and weak price action. I want you to think about a wooden stick that you can find in a forest and how easily you can break it. It is generally so easy, isn't it? Price action is the same. If you just find a single price action concept, like a single order block, without anything else to support it, it will be really weak and it may not hold your entry. However, think about 10 wooden sticks together and try to break them into pieces. Can you do it? No, you cannot. It will be so hard. It is the same with the price action. Imagine high time frame supply area, order block, imbalance, Quasimodo, Fibonacci, all in around the same price level. It does not have to be exact price level, just a similar price level. It will be super strong and it will give you much better entry and success opportunities. This is why I combine many things together in my trades. Now, as you can see here, this is a strong price action. It has a strong and high quality break. It has an order block and imbalance together, which creates the dragon fruit. It has a QML level just around the imbalance and order block. It also has a liquidation hunt from the market maker, another great sign. So if you have more signs, you'll have much better entries for your trades. Let's check out the previous example again with a different perspective. First, we have an alright market structure break. It is not the best one, but it will do. However, the first thing you notice is the imbalance. It's giant and amazing. The second thing to notice is the order block, a big green nice candlestick. Finally, the QML level from the left shoulder. Three price action concepts come together for this asset. It gives us a clear entry point. Okay, let's talk about a very common high time frame and low time frame combo. This structure keeps happening all the time with all time frames. The first sign of this structure is a high quality break with a really fast drop. Nice large candlesticks, imbalance areas, and order block. And the price slowly pulls back to our imbalance area. Probably market makers keep hunting liquidity during this pullback. Once it reaches our interest area, this is when you open low time frames. And you'll notice the same thing again, a high quality market structure break, micro imbalance, micro order block, and a possible Quasimodo level. One of the most amazing structures to enter a trade with large gains. I hope I have made everything clear. It is really about practicing. Okay guys, let's talk about this insane 500% trade. When I was just scanning high time frames with 43 to 1 hours, I noticed this insane drop. This was an obvious break, and it was not ordinary. It was extremely high quality. The first thing you should be doing is drawing the supply zone, which is the order block. In this case, this green candlestick, which is the last swing move, breaks the structure. It was also a giant engulfing pattern, an extra confirmation of a supply area. And this giant imbalance area needs to be corrected. However, I am more interested in the part in my entry zone. Let's talk about the targets. The first target was obviously this giant imbalance area. It was a massive price weirdness that needs a correction. And the order block that creates the imbalance. However, what I noticed was there were equal lows, way below the first target. So this would be my second target if the demand area did not hold. You have to keep looking for imbalances, supply demands, and liquidity areas for targets. There are two ways to enter a trade, one risky and one more secure. Let's talk about the risky entry that I've made. I was waiting for a long time for a clear market structure break to happen, and it did not happen. Once I saw these equal highs here, I waited for it to be hunted. My idea was shorting this from the middle of the 2 hours order block after the equal highs hunt. And it did happen. This is how I decided to take this trade from right here. My stop loss was above the order block. It was the safest place in my mind. I had two targets, this demand area with a large imbalance and another target that equal lows liquidity for the market maker. And it worked really well, as you can see. Now let's talk about the most ideal entry with Quasimodo, which happened right after my entry. As you can see, a really high quality break happened here with this amazing imbalance. And you can notice the QML level right here. Incredible, just aligning with the imbalance. And there is a micro order block right here, this giant green candlestick. So, Quasimodo, order block, and the imbalance. Remember the wooden sticks? Altogether, much stronger price action. A great point for an entry. Your ideal stop loss is above the order block. And the targets are the same. Imbalances, demand, and the equal lows. You can partially take profit from these targets. But I have to admit, trades like this do not happen all the time. You are usually better off with 1 hour to 2 hour or 30-40% gains. Okay folks, we did a lot today. Thank you for joining me with this free price action trading and scalping course. I hope that I can help you in your trading life to be more successful. Please subscribe to the channel and leave a like for me. Take care and see you soon.